The forgotten first step. When I walk into a gym these days, I see the same pattern repeat itself over and over. A young man or woman charges through the doors, earbuds in, a fire in their eyes. They load the barbell, tighten their belt, and within minutes, they're straining under heavy weight. Their ambition is admirable, but I can already see where this story ends. Fatigue, frustration, or worse, injury. You see, what so many forget is that every great performance begins long before the first rep. It starts with preparation. Yet warm-up, the simplest, most reliable shield we have, has become the most overlooked part of modern training. Too often people think, why waste energy? I came here to lift, not to stretch. And in that single thought, they set themselves up for failure. I have trained for decades, alongside men who became stronger than they ever dreamed, and others who burned out before their prime. The difference was not always genetics, or even effort. It was respect for the first step. Those who understood the value of priming their bodies could train longer, recover faster, and keep their strength into later years. Those who skipped it? They paid the price sooner than they expected. Warm-up is not about wasting strength. It is about unlocking it. Imagine starting a car on a winter morning. You don't slam the accelerator while the engine is cold. You let it breathe. Let the oil move. Let the machine wake up. The body is no different. Muscles, joints, even your nervous system need time to prepare. The forgotten first step is not glamorous. No one cheers for 10 minutes of mobility drills, but make no mistake, this quiet ritual is where greatness begins. Every rep, every lift, every ounce of progress, you owe it to your warm-up. 2. The myth of energy conservation. On one of the oldest excuses I have heard in the gym, and trust me, I've heard them all, is this: I skip the warm-up because I don't want to waste energy. At first glance, it sounds logical. Why spend precious strength on stretching, jogging in place, or moving light weights when the real work is waiting? But this is a dangerous illusion, one that has cost many lifters both progress and health. I learned this lesson watching a training partner many years ago. He was strong, gifted even, but always in a rush. He would leap straight into heavy sets, insisting that warm-ups drained his energy. For a while, he seemed unstoppable, until the injuries began to pile up. First it was his shoulder, then his knee, then his back. Each setback took more from him than any warm-up ever would have. Eventually, his body simply couldn't carry the burden anymore. Here's the truth most people overlook. A proper warm-up doesn't steal energy. It multiplies it. When your muscles are supplied with blood, when your joints are lubricated, when your nervous system is awake, you are not weaker, you are stronger, sharper, and more explosive. Think of it like sharpening a blade. You don't dull the knife by preparing it, you make it cut cleaner and last longer. Modern research backs up what old gym veterans already knew. Athletes who warm up effectively lift heavier, move faster, and endure longer. Those who skip it may feel like they saved a little strength in the beginning, but they end up performing at a fraction of their true potential. The myth of energy conservation is nothing more than fear disguised as efficiency. If you want your strength to serve you, not just today, but in the years ahead, spend those few minutes preparing. In the long run, you'll gain far more than you lose. 3. When warm-up turns into a workout. Now, let me share another mistake I see almost as often as skipping the warm-up altogether, turning it into an entire workout. Yes, believe it or not, some folks spend 20-30 minutes warming up, sweating through endless stretches, long runs on the treadmill, or complicated mobility drills. By the time they finally touch a barbell, they're already tired. I once trained with a man who was meticulous about preparation. He stretched every muscle, rolled every joint, jogged until his shirt was soaked. He believed the longer he warmed up, the safer and stronger he would be. But the reality was the opposite. His lifts suffered, his strength dwindled, and he often left the gym feeling more exhausted than empowered. The warm-up had stolen the spotlight from the training itself. A warm-up should serve one purpose: to prepare, not to fatigue. Think of it like lighting a campfire. You don't spend all night striking matches and burning paper. You spark just enough flame to ignite the logs. Once the fire catches, you let it grow naturally. In the same way, your warm-up should ignite your muscles, joints, and nervous system, just enough to support the work ahead. The sweet spot lies in balance. 5 to 10 minutes of targeted movement, dynamic stretches, light sets of the exercise you plan to perform, maybe a touch of cardio to raise your heart rate. That's all it takes. Anything more, and you risk draining the very energy you came to build. So remember, the warm-up is not the show. It is the rehearsal. Respect it, but don't let it steal the main act. Your strength, your endurance, your progress, they all depend on saving your best effort for when it truly counts. 4. The cost of skipping mobility. If strength is the engine of your training, then mobility is the oil that keeps it running. Yet, too many lifters, young and old, brush it aside as if it were optional. They think mobility drills are only for athletes or physical therapy patients, not for serious training. I can tell you from experience, ignoring mobility is like ignoring the rust creeping onto your car. It doesn't show up overnight, but when it does, it is costly. I remember one of my longtime training partners, a stubborn man in his 50s. He was strong, no doubt about it, but he had one rule: no stretching, no mobility. "I don't need yoga," he'd laugh, waving me off as he stacked plates on the bar. For years, he seemed fine, but slowly, his movements grew stiff. His squat became shallow, his bench press shaky, his shoulders ached after every session. Eventually, he couldn't train without pain. What he dismissed as extra was the very foundation of his longevity. Mobility work is not about bending like a gymnast or touching your toes with ease. It's about giving your joints the space to move, your muscles the freedom to contract fully, and your body the chance to recover. When you skip it, you force your body into tight, restricted patterns. And when heavy weights meet stiff joints, something eventually breaks. The cost of skipping mobility isn't just physical, it's emotional too. Training becomes frustrating when your body refuses to move the way your mind envisions. Many give up altogether, believing they are too old or too broken, when in truth, they only neglected the one thing that could have saved them. So take the time, 10 minutes, maybe 15. Work on your hips, shoulders, spine. Move through ranges of motion with intent. It may not feel heroic, but it will keep you in the fight longer than brute force ever will. 5. Listening to the body's early warnings. The body, much like an old friend, whispers before it ever shouts. Yet most lifters, especially the proud ones, ignore those whispers. A twinge in the shoulder, a tightness in the back, knees that ache only after heavy squats. They brush it off, convincing themselves it's just age, or soreness, or part of the game. I've watched too many strong men fall into that trap, and I'll tell you this: what begins as a whisper can become a scream that ends your training altogether. I recall a gentleman I coached well into his 60s. He was disciplined, sharp, but impatient. One morning, he admitted his hip felt a little off. I suggested he adjust his workout, maybe dial back the weights, add extra mobility. He refused, certain he could push through. Within weeks, that little off turned into a limp. It took him months of rehab to return, and he often told me he wished he had listened sooner. The body always leaves clues: stiffness upon waking, loss of range of motion, fatigue that lingers longer than it should. These are not signs of weakness, but signals to adjust. Younger lifters can sometimes gamble and get away with ignoring them. But for those of us in our middle years and beyond, the margin of error shrinks dramatically. Listening doesn't mean quitting. It means adapting, switching from barbell squats to lighter goblet squats for a week, adding rest days, or prioritizing recovery work. These adjustments don't derail progress, they protect it. They buy you years of consistent training instead of months of painful setbacks. So, the next time your body whispers, lean in, respect the signal, make the change, and carry on stronger. Longevity in training isn't about defying age, it's about cooperating with it. 6. The ego trap in warm-ups. Of all the mistakes I've seen in the gym, pride might be the most dangerous. Pride makes men load plates they shouldn't. Pride makes them skip rest when their bodies beg for it. And pride, yes, even pride, shows up in the warm-up. I've watched lifters treat the warm-up like a stage to prove their toughness. They'll grab a bar that's too heavy, move too fast, or turn what should be a gentle ramp into a full-blown contest. It's the ego speaking, whispering, "Don't let anyone think you're weak." But here's the truth. The warm-up is not the place to impress anyone. It's the place to protect yourself. Years ago, a younger man joined our gym, strong as an ox, full of fire. On his very first day, he loaded 2 plates on the bar, just to warm up. I advised him to start lighter, to ease his joints into the movement. He laughed, saying, "I don't need baby weights." By the 3rd rep, he felt a sharp pull in his hamstring. His training was over before it had even begun. A lesson bought the hard way. The ego trap is subtle. It convinces you that lighter weights mean weakness, that slowing down shows fragility. But in reality, wisdom lies in restraint. A proper warm-up is humble. It's light, controlled, purposeful. The strongest lifters I've ever known, the ones still training into their 60s and 70s, were never ashamed to start with an empty bar. They understood that longevity is built not on ego, but on discipline. So leave your pride at the door. In the warm-up, there are no medals, no applause, no scoreboard. Only preparation. And preparation, handled wisely, is what allows you to train not just today, but for decades to come. 7. Overlooking the power of breathing. If there's one element of training most overlooked, it's breathing. Sounds simple, doesn't it? We've been doing it since the day we were born. Yet in the gym, especially during warm-ups, most people forget how to breathe with purpose. They rush through movements holding their breath or pant shallowly, never realizing that poor breathing robs them of strength, stability, and endurance. I remember coaching a retired firefighter, a man who had carried heavy hoses up countless flights of stairs in his youth. When he returned to training in his late 50s, his biggest hurdle wasn't his muscles, it was his breath. He'd tense up during warm-ups, clenching his jaw, holding in air as if bracing for a fight. By the time he reached his working sets, he was already winded. Once we retrained his breathing, everything changed. He moved smoother, felt stronger, and most importantly, avoided the dizzy spells that had plagued him. Breathing is not just about oxygen. It's about rhythm and control. A deep inhale prepares the body. A steady exhale releases tension. In warm-ups, this becomes the foundation for safe movement. Think of breathing as your internal metronome. It keeps the tempo steady, ensures muscles are fueled, and keeps the nervous system calm. Too many older lifters underestimate this. They push harder than their breath can support, and the result is fatigue, dizziness, or worse, a sudden spike in blood pressure that can end a session abruptly. The solution is simple but powerful. Breathe with intention. Inhale through the nose, fill the belly, exhale through the mouth, controlled and steady. A wise warm-up isn't only about muscles and joints, it's about teaching the lungs and heart to keep pace. Master your breath, and you'll discover that strength is not just in the body, but in the rhythm that sustains it. 8. Building a warm-up that sustains you for life. After decades in the gym, watching young athletes rise and old warriors stumble, one truth remains clear. The warm-up is not a formality. It is your armor. It protects you today, and it preserves you for tomorrow. If you wish to train not just for months, but for years, perhaps even into your 70s and 80s, then the warm-up must evolve from a routine into a ritual. A life-sustaining warm-up begins with respect for your body. That means listening. Are the joints stiff this morning? Move them gently. Do the muscles feel tired from yesterday? Stretch them lightly. Feed them with blood and breath. The warm-up is not about checking off boxes. It is about taking inventory, understanding what your body can give today, and preparing it for safe effort. I often tell my students, warm-ups should follow 3 pillars: mobility, activation, and rhythm. Mobility to free the joints, activation to awaken the muscles, rhythm to unify breath and movement. Miss one pillar, and the structure wobbles. Embrace all 3, and you build a foundation that lasts a lifetime. I've seen men who trained like beasts in their youth, but neglected the humble act of warming up. By their 50s, their shoulders ached, their knees buckled, and their backs stiffened. And I've seen others, quieter, slower, more deliberate, who took their warm-ups seriously. They are still lifting, still walking tall, and still finding joy in movement well past retirement age. So let this be your guiding principle. Treat your warm-up as seriously as your heaviest lift. In those early minutes, you decide not only how today's session will go, but how many years of training still lie ahead of you. Longevity is not built on brute strength. It is built on respect, patience, and the discipline of preparation. Train for life, not just for today. And always, always begin with the warm-up.